Yoshi Hattori's story begins long before the fatal gunshot on a quiet Louisiana cul-de-sac. Born on November 22, 1975, in the bustling industrial city of Nagoya, Japan, he was the second child of Masaichi and Mieko Hattori. His father, an engineer with Toyota's research division, and his mother, a former kindergarten teacher, raised their three children in a modest, sunlit apartment not far from the lush banks of the Shonai River. From early childhood, Yoshi showed an almost magnetic exuberance. At age 5, he taught himself basic English phrases by mimicking the voices on imported Sesame Street videotapes. At 8, he joined a local jazz dance club and reveled in the American pop records that filled the studio. Teachers at Hachikai Junior High remembered a boy who volunteered to lead every cultural exchange day, who taped comic strip speech balloons, written in shaky English, onto classroom windows just to hear classmates giggle. He had a gift for bridging gaps, and by 15 he told his parents he wanted 1 year inside the Real America, not the version in movies. Nagoya's AFS, American Field Service, chapter was fiercely competitive, but Yoshi's infectious smile and breakneck audition dance routine earned him one of just a handful of 1992 scholarships. That spring he pored over brochures of possible host regions: snowbound Minnesota, prairie Kansas, humid Louisiana. He surprised his guidance counselor by ranking Baton Rouge first. He explained, half-joking, that jazz came from there, and alligators sound cool. All summer he prepared, brushing up on idioms, devouring John Travolta films, learning how to pronounce y'all. In late August 1992 he hugged his family at Chubu Central Airport and flew 11 hours to Los Angeles, then another 2 to New Orleans, then by van up Interstate 10 to Baton Rouge. Waiting curbside were his host parents, Richard and Holly Haymaker. He a physics professor at Louisiana State University, she a physician at the Student Health Center, and their lanky, soft-spoken 17-year-old son, Webb. The Haymakers lived in a roomy, tree-shaded house on Lee Drive, filled with paperback novels, jazz LPs and half-finished science fair projects. Yoshi dazzled them from day one. He insisted on cooking miso soup the first morning. Holly diplomatically diluted the salt. Tried out for the McKinley Senior High Tiger Band trumpet section the second day, and by the third evening was teaching Webb how to moonwalk across the kitchen linoleum. His spoken English was still halting. He rolled his R's, clipped his articles and substituted please for excuse me. Yet he compensated with wild gesticulation and contagious laughter. Neighbors soon recognized the new kid zipping down the street on a battered 10-speed, white bandana flapping behind him like a banner. Autumn in Baton Rouge is wet and heavy, the air thick with magnolia perfume and the distant thrum of cicadas. Yoshi adored every sensory jolt. Tailgate parties outside Tiger Stadium, shrimp boil steam curling into twilight, the sweet smoke of pile-burning sugarcane. On the 1st of October he bought a second-hand white polyester tuxedo from a thrift shop on Government Street, waving it triumphantly at Webb and shouting, "Saturday Night Fever." They planned to wear costumes to as many Halloween gatherings as possible. The Haymakers themselves were hosting an AFS potluck on the 30th, but on Saturday the 17th a fellow exchange student across town was throwing an early costume party. The printed invitation listed the address: 10131 East Brookside Drive, a middle-class subdivision 20 minutes away. Saturday afternoon unfolded lazily. Yoshi practiced dance moves in the living room mirror, tightening his cummerbund until the fabric squeaked. Webb assembled a mock car crash victim look. Thrift store blazer slashed at the sleeve, thrift store neck brace splattered with stage blood. Around 6:45 p.m. they hopped into Webb's silver Toyota Corolla, stereo blasting Michael Jackson. A brilliant red sun was melting behind the loblolly pines as they wound through Windsor Place subdivision, passing yards decked in plastic tombstones and orange-lit jack-o'-lanterns. Here a minute decision nudged fate. House numbers in Windsor Place looped in a gentle horseshoe, and the digits 10131 and 10311 often confused delivery drivers. Webb slowed in front of 10,311 rather than 10,131. From the curb the two houses looked nearly twins. Brick facade, side carport, glowing porch, which silhouette. Yoshi bounded out first, tuxedo gleaming, camera dangling, shouting, "Halloween!" They walked up the limestone path and knocked on the wooden side door. Inside 10311 lived Rodney and Bonnie Pierres. Rodney, 30 years old, had risen before dawn for his shift as a meat cutter at Winn-Dixie, had grilled steaks for supper, and by 7 p.m. was settling before the TV to watch LSU highlights. Bonnie, 27, sat on the couch in a pastel tracksuit, still jittery from recent burglary rumors in the neighborhood. Hearing knocking, she peeked through the narrow glass pane. Outside stood an athletic Asian teenager in a dazzling white suit, waving something metallic, the camera's chrome body, while another lanky teen with blood running down his chin loomed behind. Startled, Bonnie yanked the door shut, turned and shouted, "Rodney, get the gun, they've got something." Rodney strode to the bedroom closet and retrieved a Ruger .44 Magnum revolver, an oversized hunting sidearm he kept loaded with jacketed hollow points. He thumbed back the hammer as he moved to the carport door. Outside, Yoshi misunderstood the slammed door as playful mischief. Thinking the Pierreses were staging a Halloween scare, he stepped off the stoop and circled toward the wider carport entrance, grinning broadly. Rodney flung open the door, weapon raised chest high, and barked, "Freeze." Webb froze. Yoshi, ears full of rushing adrenaline and imperfect comprehension, heard something like, "Please." He blurted, "We're here for the party," and took one more buoyant step. Rodney fired. The .44 round drilled through Yoshi's left pectoral, pulverized lung tissue, clipped the aorta, and exited his back. He spun, staggered 3 steps, and collapsed in the pea gravel. Webb screamed, "Call an ambulance," then sprinted across the street to hammer on a neighbor's door. Inside 10311, Bonnie sobbed hysterically. Rodney, white-faced, muttered, "I didn't mean to, I thought. Yet for minutes neither ventured out to render aid. Neighbors dialed 911, and by 7:25 a.m. sheriff's cruiser and EMT units screeched up. Paramedics found Yoshi unresponsive, pupils blown, breath rasping through bubbled blood. They evacuated him to Baton Rouge General Medical Center, where surgeons cracked his chest in a desperate thoracotomy, clamped the aorta, transfused 8 units of O-negative. At 8:04 p.m. Yoshihiro Hattori was pronounced dead. The Baton Rouge Sunday Advocate ran a 3-paragraph blurb the next morning. Exchange student killed, homeowner fires warning. But by Monday afternoon, Japanese wire services had splashed the news across every major Tokyo paper. Within 48 hours, NHK dispatched a satellite crew to Louisiana. Japanese consular officials landed at New Orleans International Airport clutching briefing folders on U.S. gun statutes. Back in Nagoya, the Hattori family sat in shock as reporters congregated outside their apartment. Masaichi flew to Baton Rouge within 2 days, landing to greet Richard Haymaker at the morgue, where a coroner's attendant opened a steel drawer to reveal his son's body, face strangely peaceful beneath a sheet. Sheriff's deputies initially accepted Rodney Pierre's explanation of self-defense and released him without charge. Public furor erupted, first from the Japanese government, then from Louisiana's own governor, who telephoned the district attorney demanding action. On October 21, Pierre's was arrested and indicted for manslaughter. The legal odyssey that followed plunged 2 families and 2 cultures into a storm of courtroom drama, editorial outrage, and raw grief. Louisiana's manslaughter statute required the prosecution to prove an unreasonable belief of danger. Pierre's defense hinged on the reasonable man standard in a state steeped in gun ownership and castle doctrine traditions. Jury selection began May 17, 1993. Attorneys quizzed veneiremen about burglaries, fear, Halloween pranks, and racial bias. The 12 jurors finally seated, 10 white, 2 black, listened as prosecutors replayed the 911 audio tape, its background sirens punctuated by Webb Haymaker's trembling voice. Forensic pathologists displayed grisly autopsy slides. Ballistic experts hefted the heavy Ruger revolver for the jury to feel its weight. On the stand, Bonnie Pierre sobbed that she had never been so scared, while Rodney, cheeks slick with tears, testified that when Yoshi advanced he saw only a blur and thought he was going to hurt my wife. The defense team emphasized a climate of break-ins, Yoshi's rapid movements, and the cultural gulf that left his gesture unreadable. The verdict, not guilty, came after just 3 hours of deliberation on May 23. In courtroom row 2, Mieko Hattori let out a strangled gasp. Richard Haymaker buried his face in both hands. Outside, Japanese journalists phoned Tokyo with single-word dispatches, "Murahachi, shame." Editorials in Asahi Shimbun decried American gun law anarchy, while U.S. talk radio hosts invoked the right to defend hearth and home. But the Hattoris refused to let grief fester into silence. Returning to Japan, they launched an unprecedented petition drive, mobilizing schoolchildren, trade union chapters, Buddhist temples and city assemblies. Within 10 months, 1.7 million handwritten signatures, some pages blotched with snowmelt ink from Hokkaido collection drives, filled shipping crates bound for Washington, D.C. In October 1993, the Hattoris, accompanied by Holly Haymaker and several fellow AFS parents, walked up Pennsylvania Avenue to the White House, where President Bill Clinton greeted them in the Oval Office. They laid the petitions on the carpet, explaining in halting English their hope that no other parent must feel this pain. Weeks later, the Brady Handgun Violence Prevention Act cleared its final Senate hurdle. Backers openly cited Yoshi's case as emotional spur. Though the act focused on background checks and waiting periods, Japanese media hailed it as Yoshi's Law. Parallel to legislative battles, the Hattoris filed a wrongful death suit in civil court. In September 1994, after wrenching testimony, a Baton Rouge judge ordered Rodney Pierres to pay $650,000 in damages, $100,000 from his homeowner's policy, the rest personally. Pierres's butcher wages could never cover the sum. Over the years, the family relinquished their house and declared bankruptcy. Masaichi and Mieko placed every dollar they received into the newly formed Yoshi Foundation, underwriting exchange scholarships that sent American high schoolers to Japan and brought Japanese teens to U.S. summer peace camps. Grief did not taper neatly. Webb Haymaker, who had stood barefoot on that driveway watching his friend bleed, carried survivor's guilt like a stone in his chest. He graduated LSU, trained as a counselor, and spoke at universities about cultural tolerance. Yet episodes of depression returned, and in August 2022, on the eve of the 30th anniversary of Yoshi's death, Webb took his own life. Holly Haymaker later wrote in a community care journal that 2 shots were fired that night. One we heard, one we didn't know would echo 30 years. Meanwhile, in Japan, Mieko Hattori became a fixture on anti-gun panels, traveling annually to the United States. Los Angeles after Columbine, Blacksburg after Virginia Tech, Orlando after Pulse, Parkland after Marjorie Stoneman Douglas. At each site she knelt, placed white lilies, and told reporters about the boy who practiced disco spins in a Baton Rouge living room. She aged into her 70s, her voice thinning but resolve sharpening. In 2018, she stood before thousands at the March for Our Lives rally on the National Mall, clutching Yoshi's weathered AFSID card, whispering that she still smelled his aftershave on the plastic. Rodney Pierres retreated into obscurity. He sold guns, swore never again to own one, shuffled between labor jobs, and according to sparse local interviews, lived with an ache that no Sunday preacher can cure. He rarely spoke publicly, but on the 25th anniversary he issued a short statement through an intermediary. "I wish it hadn't happened. I wish I could change that night. I am sorry for their pain." Today, in Nagoya's Higashi ward, the Hattori family keeps a small second-floor room as a shrine. On one wall hangs the white tuxedo jacket, its lapel carefully sewn to seal the bullet hole opened by coroners during autopsy. Beneath it sits a low altar with framed photographs from Yoshi's childhood, chasing pigeons at Meijo Park, holding a trumpet at junior high recital, balancing chopsticks under his nose like walrus tusks. Every October 17th, friends gather to burn incense and read letters from scholarship students whose lives Yoshi unwittingly changed. One letter, from an Alabama teenager who spent a semester in Kyoto: "Thanks, the boy I never met who showed me the world." Across the Pacific, Baton Rouge high schoolers still bike down Lee Drive beneath moss-draped oaks. On East Brookside Drive, the Pierres house has long since changed owners. New residents plant seasonal mums and hang string lights each Halloween. Most neighbors no longer recall the sirens, the reporter vans, the candlelight vigils. Yet somewhere in the subtropical hush of a Louisiana evening, if one stands outside and listens, it is possible to imagine 2 teenagers stepping out of an old Corolla. One in a neck brace, the other in a gleaming white suit, laughing at private jokes, brimming with expectation, unaware that a single misunderstanding is about to reverberate for decades, reshaping laws, families, and the fragile space where cultures meet. Yoshi Hattori's story has no clean ending. It threads through scholarship applications stamped in Tokyo ward offices, through congressional hearings on background checks, through the quiet grief of a host family's empty bedroom. It endures as a caution and a plea, an enduring reminder of how quickly joy can collide with fear, and how a single door opened or shut can alter the course of countless lives.